I'd like to emphasize one thing. We're talking all the time about American pressure on Israel to stop the firing, to work for a ceasefire. There's also the question of Hamas, who's actually started the firing from Gaza. What is the pressure on them? So that seems to be coming mostly from the Egyptians and from other Arab sources. Of course, because Hamas is defined as a terrorist organization, there's no direct talks between America and Hamas. So other elements are pressuring Hamas to agree to a ceasefire. So that seems to be in the works. There was some talk about a ceasefire possibly as early as 6 o'clock local time tomorrow morning. And in fact, Egyptian security sources have been quoted as saying that they said there was an agreement in principle by the two sides for a ceasefire, but it's difficult for anybody, especially Netanyahu, to say that's actually happening because they don't want to endanger the progress towards that ceasefire. So we're hearing different things. On the one hand, Netanyahu is saying we're going to keep fighting, we're going to do what we need to do and take our time as long as it takes. On the other hand, we're hearing that there's a potential agreement according to those Egyptian security sources. So we just unfortunately have to wait and see. Everyone's playing it very closely to the chest. But the one clear thing is that pressure is growing very strongly on the Israelis to initiate a ceasefire, possibly as early as tomorrow morning local time. Casey?
So, Martin, can I just follow up on the levers that are available to the Egyptians, to others, to put pressure on Hamas? What does that look like? I mean, I feel like we've talked a lot, and I have a very good understanding of the levers that America can use in relation to Israel and even in relation to aid to Gaza and the West Bank. But what can the Egyptians and others do to try to put pressure on Hamas to ultimately end up in a ceasefire?
Well, it's financial. Bottom line, it's financial. Gaza depends on financial aid from outside, from other Arab countries. Egypt has a border with Rafah. We always talk about Israel closing the border with Gaza, but actually Egypt has a border with Gaza too at Rafah, and that for the time being is for the most part closed as well. So Hamas being squeezed from both sides. There's growing pressure within Gaza among Palestinians on Hamas. Palestinians saying, you know, what are we getting from this? Most of the Hamas fighters are way underground in the tunnels. They haven't been seen. If you notice, we're seeing lots of rockets being fired out of Gaza. But when was the last time you saw any Hamas or Islamic Jihad fighter with a gun on the streets in Gaza? I haven't seen that. So there's pressure growing within Gaza on Hamas to show something for their victory. The thing we have to remember here is that, and I know I'm getting a bit geopolitical here, but Hamas is supported by Iran. Iran wants this. Iran wants this to continue because anybody fighting Israel is doing the work of Iran, and this is the bigger picture. The other question is that Hezbollah in Lebanon, also backed financially and militarily by Iran, is looking very closely at the pressure that is being placed on Israel right now. Will Israel fold to pressure? Will Israel not achieve the goals it wants militarily because it's under such pressure politically? Does that mean that there's a weak point that Hezbollah and Iran can leverage and benefit from in the future? So that's one of the considerations that Israel, and I'm certain the United States as well, are considering. We don't want to weaken Israel in the eyes of Iran and Hezbollah, but we do need to stop the fighting in Gaza. So that's the kind of political balance that is in play when America is pressuring Israel to stop fighting very soon.